comfy.
This is super comfy. I feel like I'm on an intimate couch. Can I take your guys' order?
Yes.
Guys, thank you so much for doing this. I am so stoked. Terrifier 2 absolutely was one of my top favorite horror movies of last year, and I saw a lot of them. And there was between X and Pearl and Barbarian, yet your independent movie blew everything away. So, behalf on all the horror fans, thank you, because that movie was brutal, it was violent, and it was absolutely effing rad. So, guys, thank you so much. So,
Thanks, buddy. Thank you.
First of all, give them a round of applause. That movie was dope. Who's seen Terrifier 2 yet? Yeah, it's all 2.5 hours of just bloody awesome action. Fantastic. So my first question for you guys, and this is for both of you guys, why clowns? What do you think makes people so terrified of clowns and makes it such a perfect, like, monster?
It's a good question. I'm always thinking about that. I get that question a lot now. I think one of the things is really the white face goes a long way in being terrifying. I think when you take away the red, the pigment, the life, you know, there's something very synonymous with death when you see a white face in particular. Like when you see Linda Blair's face in The Exorcist, that's a horrifying image, or that subliminal demon that flashes. Very creepy. But there's just something very unnatural about a clown, and just the way their mannerisms are so over the top and otherworldly. It's very alien, and they come across as very unpredictable, and they're so happy and giddy and childlike about it, and there's just something very unnerving about a clown, and then all you gotta do is put a knife in that character's hand and then off to the races.
It also has to do a lot with the uncanny valley, because they're very human-like, but not human-like, because everything's more exaggerated. All the facial features, their movements, everything like that. So I think it's like, okay, they're close to what we are, but there's something off. And I think that's what's so disturbing to people. Then you also have things that have actually happened in the real world with like Gacy and stuff like that, where or just, Ronald McDonald, all these people dying from, heart disease. I mean, Ronald's killed more people than anybody, I think. So, yeah.
So staying on the subject of clowns, David, you did a lot of, art is super silent and very physical. Did you do a lot of like mime pantomiming, study clowning or anything like that to get the mannerisms and look of art?
Well, I know there's like the rumor going out there that I studied mime work, like I was trained in mime work. I was not, no, but I have been a lifelong fan of physical comedy and mime work and clowning. I was watching the great physical comedians of old from the silent film era, like Chaplin and Buster Keaton and the Marx Brothers, but I also was watching,
Did you say Mr. Bean?
Mr. Bean, of course.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Jim Carrey, Peter Sellers, Doug Jones. Those were the guys I learned from growing up, and I did a lot of children's theater when I was starting out as an actor, and I did a lot of physical comedy because children love physical comedy over the verbal comedy, and that's where I was perfecting my skills. And then I was very lucky back in like about 2010 to be cast as the understudy for the Grinch and How the Grinch Stole Christmas the musical. And our Grinch was the wonderfully talented Stephen Carl, who many people might remember as Robbie Rotten from Lazy Town. And Stephen was actually trained in clowning and everything like that. So he was able to take everything I had been doing for years, just like, I see exactly what you're doing, but here are the few things you can do just to fine-tune things and make it better. And I went basically straight from my last tour with Grinch to filming Terrifier, so that was very fresh in my head after all those years. And I even called up Stefan when I was cast as Art, like, hey buddy, I'm actually playing one of these like silent mischievous characters that we were always talking about and we love. Like, can you give me some tips on how to really bring him to life? And he gave me some great tips. And you can actually probably look at my performance and see some of his performances as Robbie Rotten and make some comparison, because that was, he was a big inspiration for me there. So yeah.
That's very cool, and it's interesting how it comes full circle from the Grinch to the mean one.
Yeah, imagine that.
So kind of along the same questions for you, did you have any inspirations when you were creating Terrifier, or any clowning or anything like that was like struck a chord in your mind, like the lightning bolts going off?
I'm influenced by so many things since I've been watching horror movies since I'm 4 years old, 3, 4. Totally obsessed with the slashers in particular. I love Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers, and Leatherface. I used to have model kits all over my room and pictures, and so obsessed. But when it came to the first short film with Art the Clown, I was just kind of exploring. When you're an aspiring filmmaker, especially into horror, you're always wondering, what could I do different with a vampire, or my take on a zombie? And it was, what could I do with a clown? And the first idea I ever had with what you know now as Art the Clown was Art terrorizing this woman on a bus in the middle of the night, just doing his, typical Art the Clown shtick, like staring at her, smiling, honking his horn, making her feel really uncomfortable, just gradually getting more and more threatening.
Yeah.
And I just said, that could be really creepy. And then when I started designing the character, I just kept making sure that I was staying as far away from Tim Curry's Pennywise, because he was the king of killer clowns at that time. So I just kept making Art simpler and simpler and taking away the color and all those just classic clown attributes like the bulbous red nose and the hair. And then I didn't want him to speak, because I always found the silent slashers to be creepier when you can't communicate with them, and they're more animal and they're just staring at you and stalking you. So I thought it'd be just a different character. And when I made that short film, Art was only in the first 4 minutes. He kind of opens it up and abducts this woman, and then he disappears. And everybody who saw that short film was like, dude, that clown at the beginning is crazy. Like, there's something there. You have to keep making more short films with that character. And I was like, all right. I get that note enough, you gotta listen. So, but you said like a light bulb moment or, lightning. It wasn't really there when I first created him. I knew he looked really striking, and he was creepy, and I thought he was very cool. But it wasn't until I made the second short film with him, Terrifier, where I realized, ooh, there's really something kind of magical with this character. It's when I turned him into a slasher and really started developing his dark sense of humor, where I said, I really want to explore more with this character and get him into a feature.
Yeah, and when you're saying your inspirations, that makes sense, because your movies have this old school horror feel, and I think that's missing in a lot of newer horror movies. I mean, there's always a place for quote-unquote elevated horror nowadays, but for horror fans, there's always going to be a place for the guts and gore and slashers and all that old school stuff.
And that's how I felt, because I am just a fan who happens to also, be a filmmaker, and I felt like that was missing. For me, there was a point where I kind of stopped watching modern horror movies, and I just kept rewatching the older ones because they weren't striking that chord with me anymore. I was like, am I just hung up on nostalgia, or am I out of touch? Like, I don't know, but they're just not doing it for me anymore, and I just wanted to try and recapture that for myself. It turns out a lot of people have the same interest that I do.
I was going to say, that's the horror lover's bane. And I think every horror fan nowadays are looking at the things, remembering the old school, growing up with horror, and thinking like, I like some of this new stuff, but I don't know. And so whenever you have somebody old school bringing that old school feel, aces. Much props to you guys. So, this movie and Art has skyrocketed. I mean, there are kids, there's kids in the audience right now cosplaying as Art the Clown, right? You are primed to be the next great horror icon. How does that make you guys feel? And is it still like, whatever? Or is it like, are you trying to grip with that term? Because you guys are huge.
It's never whatever. We are so grateful, and it is still very surreal. It doesn't quite sink in. We do get people telling us all the time, like, how does it feel that you created the next slasher icon? And it's the most amazing thing in the world to hear that, especially because inside it's still very much living that 7-year-old horror fan, right? He's very much alive in there, and I love hearing that the most. That makes me feel like a kid, and that's sort of a dream come true. But I think only, we never go around saying that we've created an icon. We love hearing you guys say that, and only you guys could really, say whether or not that's true. But I think time will tell. We're still very young in this game, so I think we have to maybe another movie or two to really prove ourselves. So we're really going to keep striving. Like I said, we don't take any of this for granted, and we're going to keep trying to make the best movies possible and keep this character alive and well and fresh.
I agree. It's very weird at times when I hear people use the icon word. I'm like, what? No. It's very surreal. I almost kind of feel like imposter syndrome at times when people are saying this kind of stuff. I'm like, no. This is especially when I'm at some of these conventions with those icons. And it's like all the different actors have played Jason and Michael Myers and Pinhead and Leatherface, and even they are coming up to us and congratulating us. It's just kind of like, what, is this really happening? It's like, this no, pinch me. But it feels very weird, but it's just because I'm like, to me, those are the greats. Those are the legends. I feel like I'm just like an apprentice right now.
But you guys are just killing it. I mean, soon people are going to say Freddy, Jason, Chucky, Art. People, and so
thank you for that.
I'm looking forward to those days. So keep it up. So speaking of showing the love, I'm going to get a tiny bit inappropriate right now. David, there's a lot of people that are afraid and have an absolute fear of clowns. On the opposite side of the spectrum, so has anything like that, will you go on a date, will you dress up like Art,
Yeah. It's interesting. I'll just say that. It's been interesting.
So, question. I know when it first came out, there was a whole bunch of actual real clowns really upset. Stop making fun of us and you're giving us a bad name. Honk, honk, right? So, have you, right? And then here's a list of a whole bunch of clowns that are angry and they keep pulling out a big thing out of their side. Have you guys ran into any pissed off clowns?
No.
Not in real life yet, but I have had some messages, not recently, but a few years ago, I was getting some messages from some people like, you're ruining it for all of us right now, blah, blah, blah. I think, Gacy kind of ruined it for everybody. It's like, he was the actual one doing this stuff. I just pretend. But that's the thing, it's just like, there's room for everybody, I feel like. I mean, I've been a lifelong fan of clowns. I was never afraid of clowns. I was watching the Bozo show every single morning before I went to school as a child. I love that. I love going to the circus. The clowns are always my favorite part of the circus. And the Cirque du Soleil, I'm like, anytime I'm like, okay, I've seen the acrobats, and like, get to the clowns again. Those are more fun. So I love clowns. So I think there's room for everybody there. You can have the scary ones, you can have the fun ones.
I think coulrophobia, right, the fear of clowns, I think that's way more prevalent with real clowns, not horror movie clowns. I mean, that existed way before, scary clown movies and that kind of culture. So, yeah, I think they kind of made their own bed.
Right? Let's just hope some 8-foot-tall giant monster clown doesn't come up, I'm going to book these size 25 right where the sun don't shine, so.
It's like, oh boy, good.
So, there was some famous stories, like I just saw Near Dark recently, and there was a famous story where Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton in full getup would go out and cause shenanigans, picking up hitchhikers, scaring the hell out of people. Any shenanigans of that? Did you decide not to take off the costume one day and go to an Arby's or something?
Well, I didn't go out in too much in public, because especially some of the locations we were filming, it's like, this is probably not a good idea, but we did have both, it's just like, it seems like this is my thing that goes on in these sets now. It's like, we have scared some people. Like the first film, there were these two ladies outside of our building we were filming in Trenton, and they were having a very Jerry Springer argument outside. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm bored. And I'm like, I'm gonna go watch this. This is gonna be interesting. And I forgot how I looked. And I had the full blood and everything, and I'm in the window above them just watching this whole argument because I'm bored. And they look up at me, I'm like, hi, and I forgot. And they see me like, ah! Go running off. And then they come in, like our producers and Damien come in like 15 minutes later, just giggling and stuff like that. Hey Dave, we got some people here that want to meet you. I'm like, okay, who's coming to meet me at 2 o'clock in the morning here in Trenton, New Jersey? I'm like, okay. He's like, well, don't come out until we tell you. I'm like, okay. So there's like a big garage door roll-up type thing. And I'm waiting on the other side, like, Dave, come out. I'm like, okay, here I come. I'm rolling up the garage door. I come up, and it's about 15 of New Jersey's finest and full-on riot gear. And my butt just goes, and I'm like, oh, this is where I die. And it's silent. And I'm like, okay, how can I diffuse this situation? So I'm just like, what's up, guys? And it's still silent. I'm like, yep, I'm going to die. I'm going to die right now. Thanks, Damien. Thanks. And then they all just start laughing their heads off. And they're like, yeah, you better be glad you weren't the first one that comes out here, because we would have shot you on sight. And I'm like, yeah, I believe you. And the best part is they were all getting their photos with me, and there's this one cop that was just terrified of clowns. And he's like, come on, Joe, come on, go over here, get a picture with him. He's like, no, man, no, I can't do it. I'm like, dude, you got a rocket launcher on you. I think you're gonna be okay. And he was just terrified of me. And this happened again on part 2 when I'm going at the laundromat scene. Because I had to walk in across the street, and people are going to work in the morning. And we're sitting there doing this whole thing where I had to disrobe, so I'm basically wearing nothing except for a newspaper. And all of a sudden, woo! I'm like, oh no, not again. And Damien's like, Dave, you need to go mess with him. I'm like, no. And it's this female.
Always trying to get him shot.
Yeah. And this female cop just comes in and it's like, so, I hear there was a clown that walked in here covered in blood. And I just like lean forward, I'm like, hi, that was me. And it's like, oh, sir, can you stand up for us? I'm like, no, you don't want me to stand up right now. It's like, oh, well, then she really looks at me, she's like, oh, I see why we were called. It's like, you're doing a movie, right? You're like, yeah. So yeah, those are the kind of things that have happened. So this is why I usually, like, if we're really filming, I don't really try to go out, because you just never know. It's just interesting, some of these places we filmed in.
You might need a wardrobe in with a bulletproof vest underneath the clown costume pretty soon. So, like I said, this movie is huge, absolute fan favorite. I personally saw it twice in the theater, and every time it was just, the crowd was just eating it up, laughing at the right parts, laughing at the not right parts. But when Felissa Rose showed up, both of my theaters erupted in cheers. So, are you having our other, I'm sure Felissa, I heard nothing but good things, right? Do you have any more people that you want to work with or have put cameos in there for upcoming projects?
There's so many. There's actually